get serious about building content sites and building a profitable business online? Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. We bring you the latest field-tested tips, tricks, and strategies for building a profitable online asset. We interview industry experts, share customer success stories, and reveal our own experiences working on hundreds of sites to inspire and motivate you to make something happen. Let's do this.
Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. Today we have Nick Jordan. Now, Nick Jordan has a case study where he's taken a company from 0 page views per month to 1.5 million page views per month. And we kind of dive into his processes around content strategy, how he likes to cluster his content, internal linking, the importance he places on content velocity, deciding on keywords, why he doesn't go to build and buy backlinks, essentially the whole shebang around his content strategy and how he grows essentially his content businesses to high traffic volumes. But before that as well, we kind of dive into his SaaS product called WorkAllo, and it's to help you hire writers. And obviously as niche website builders or content site creators, we're always looking to increase the volume of the content on the site or increase the speed that we're kind of publishing. Obviously, if we're a one-man band writing it ourselves, there's only so much we can do. And hiring writers can be a pain. Obviously, going through maybe Upwork, Fiverr, whatever you're doing, trying to vet good writers can be difficult. It can be time consuming. And so we kind of dive into his process of how they template and write for job adverts, how to create a writing test so you can vet your writers properly and not essentially hire the best of the worst that you've found. Obviously, his platform allows you to get a lot of different candidates quickly, so you can quickly vet them through his writing tests. So that might be of interest to a lot of you who are looking to expand your writing team. We also dive into some of his processes as well and kind of how he's built his team and the systems behind it, which is interesting and applicable for a lot of you. Now, obviously, if you're listening on a podcast platform, I would highly recommend that you watch this on YouTube because he shares a screen during this podcast and he runs through his essentially keyword list or an example keyword list using ClusterAI and how he creates and formats a page around wireless earbuds. So essentially taking a page, best wireless earbuds, and then how he decides how he's going to format that page based on the cluster keywords that he's given, which is quite interesting and very practical for anyone watching. So I highly recommend you watch this on YouTube. But sit back and enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by Niche Website Builders, an agency dedicated to helping people just like you build profitable content sites. Niche Website Builders are the hands-off content site marketing agency you always wished existed. It's run by content site marketers for content site marketers, and they help both investors and individuals alike build profitable online properties. They provide a fully outsourced approach to content creation, link building, and done-for-you website builds, the same approach they use on their own six-figure portfolios. For example, their content packages come with a proprietary keyword research process, are written by in-house native English speakers, formatted using templates proven to convert, and uploaded to WordPress with affiliate links added so that all you need to do is hit the publish button. Check them out at nichewebsite.builders/show. That's nichewebsite.builders/show and fill out the form to get coupon codes for 10% more content or a 10% discount on links with your first order sent right to your inbox.
Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. Today we have Nick Jordan. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, super excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week.
No, perfect. It's glad to have you here. So, all right. So maybe for anyone who's not quite familiar with who you are, do you want to maybe give a brief background and we're going to dive into first one of your SaaS products?
Yeah, for sure. So my claim to fame is I took a website from 0 to 1.5 million organics a month in about 2 years without building any backlinks or any new backlinks, at least. No technical BS. We just published a lot of great content. And it wasn't the first time we've taken a handful of projects from 0 to 100,000 organics a month. This just had was the most successful.
Nice. Short and sharp. I like it. Yeah. So I want to start with this product called WorkAllo, your SaaS product. Now, before I dive into your case study itself, into the growing the traffic, I actually wanted to dive into the product itself because I did some little research last night. I signed up for the trial, it looked really interesting. Essentially, it's a platform for hiring writers. Now, I was kind of reading through it. I guess this would be good for some clarification for myself and for anyone maybe listening to this who decides, hey, I want to use that platform to hire writers too, to make it easier for them and easier to understand. So the first thing, I guess, is you sign up and then you get prompted with creating your job ad. And so I went to the job ad and I saw I had a template already. And the template I wasn't quite sure, am I hiring a writer from this template or am I hiring almost like a content editor or someone who's part of my whole, maybe higher up in my team, like a full-time employee? So I guess maybe do you want to run through and maybe clarify kind of like the job descriptions? Are there other templates? Do I need to write my own? Things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So just to back up even a little bit more,
Yeah.
workello.com is a pre-hire assessment platform to identify and hire the top 1% of your writing candidates. And kind of the thinking behind it is on this case study where I grew this startup from 0 to 1.5 million organics a month. We ended up building our content team to 45 writers and editors to execute on that project because we were publishing more than 800 pages a month. And this client had basically insatiable appetite for good content. And so my agency growth was only limited by how fast I could hire good writers. And so I spent like 1,000 hours treating hiring good writers like it was a core competency and really figuring out how to do it as easy as possible, as consistently as possible, with as few clicks as possible. And so I basically had this kind of passive hiring funnel where new candidates just appear in my hiring dashboard, and it's very easy to kind of assess them before I hire them. During the setup process, basically the intent is to show you, hey, everything's pre-written and pre-configured for you.
Yeah.
So we've pre-written the job ad that we know resonates with strong candidates. We've pre-written the writing test that we know is comprehensive enough, but also easy enough for the best candidates to invest their valuable time into taking it. And once you're up and running in 90 seconds, you can just start funneling your candidates into the assessment platform.
Gotcha. So where does the job ad get posted then? Because is it people that are already subscribed to your platform or is it going out to third-party platforms?
Yeah, so it's not a marketplace. You need to bring the candidates. And the reason is because marketplaces, writer marketplaces especially, I think are inherently challenging. Good writers, a good writer is worth their weight in Google stock. And so if I had a list of 100 pre-vetted writers, aka writer marketplace, and I gave you that list, well, I've already given that list to 1,000 people before you. And so by the time you get the list of pre-vetted writers, well, all the writers are going to have jobs. But let's say that of these 100 pre-vetted writers in my writer marketplace, you get a couple to agree to work for you. Well, I'm going to give that list to the next 1,000 people after you. And so they're not going to work for you for long before someone else is offering them a slightly higher rate and they go and work for them. And so you bring the candidates, you post your job ad on Reddit, you post your job on Facebook groups of interest-based communities for the type of writers that you're looking for. So if you need paralegals, go to the paralegal Facebook groups. If you need healthcare content, go to the certified nursing assistant groups, et cetera. And so you can kind of choose the writers that you're funneling into your hiring funnel.
Gotcha. So essentially, WorkAllo provides you with the skeleton or the backbone for your hiring process, and then you go out and use that to essentially find writers to bring in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And essentially the problems it's solving is that writing is the lowest barrier work from home job, which means most of your candidates, regardless of where you're hiring, are aspirational, meaning that they currently work at a gas station, they currently dig ditches, and they don't want to dig ditches anymore. They want to work from home. And hey, they kind of speak English. So why don't they be a writer? And so that means that, you do a hiring cycle, 95% of the candidates aren't qualified. And how do you quickly filter through those candidates so you're only left with the best? Well, it's manual, it's tedious, it's chaotic. You're sending Google Docs. There's like 100 clicks per candidate. And essentially there's so much friction, you just don't test a lot of candidates. You only test a few. And when you test a few, you don't hire the best, you hire the least worst. And so Workello really enables you to actually assess hundreds of candidates in just a few minutes. And the ones that pass out the other side will be your best candidates, and they will be good hires.
Gotcha. I've felt that pain before. I'm sure many people listening to this have also gone through similar hiring processes with their writers as well. But I guess in terms of testing the writers then, because obviously you have without giving away maybe too much IP around your process regarding the writing test, if someone wants to create their own writing test or maybe use your template to edit it, what actually goes into it to decipher whether that writer is going to be a good fit for your site?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're designing the writing test, I can give away it all, by the way. There's two things you're balancing. The first is you're balancing comprehensiveness. The test needs to be comprehensiveness for the results to align with kind of post-hire performance. But it can't be too comprehensive, or your candidates, especially your best candidates, won't take the test. You know, your test take rate is a KPI in your funnel that you optimize for. And so we've designed the test to balance comprehensiveness and test take rate. And what our tests look like is they're 300 to 500 words. The writer starts an article. They're going to do, let's say, an H1 and a couple H2s, and there's some instructions like, hey, internally link to these 3 sites, use a list table and bullets. And essentially what we're evaluating is their spelling, grammar, formatting, and can they follow instructions.
So are you giving them the heading tags, or are you saying like this is the topic, you go find the headings, and then you go
We'll give them the keyword, yeah. We're writing an article about this keyword, write the H1, write the H2s, internally link to these 4 links so we know that they understand how to internal link, because it's not a given.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and so it should take around 20 to 30 minutes, and the average test take rate of a Workello customer is anywhere between, I'd say, 60 to 90%, depending on how cool the brand is and how good of a job that they do at communicating kind of the opportunity that the position represents. You know, one of our customers, Copy.ai, they're going to have a much stronger test completion rate because they have a really cool brand. They raised $14 million. They're one of the top AI tools. And the candidates that apply really want to work for a cool brand.
Is there a strategy then for maybe sites that are starting out looking to hire writers that don't have that brand recognition to kind of find those writers? Or is it just get as many eyeballs on the test as possible so you can try to get people in?
It's definitely both. So you do want to do whatever you can to make your company sound as cool as you can. And I'm sure there's, you know, in 2022, you don't have ping pong tables and you don't have, you know, beer Fridays, but you can talk about the scale that you operate or the opportunity for the person applying for the job. Now, this is going to make you laugh, but one of the things that I found in common with most good writers is none of them want to write anymore. Most writers no longer want to write. And so if you can clearly communicate a path to becoming your first editor, that will get you some really, really strong candidates who are very good, but like actually have been writing for a long time and want to do something new. And so we communicate that all of our editors start off as writers. And so if you're a good writer for a couple months, you know, you won't be a good writer for long, you'll be a good editor. And that's very compelling for good writers who don't want to write.
How would you then design that path? Maybe let's take, for example, someone who isn't on a scale like maybe you're on there when you've got like 45 plus writers and just funneling them through. Maybe you're looking to hire 2-3 writers and maybe scale 6-12 months down the line with more writers. How do you then design a workplace promotion, kind of schedule for these writers to maybe move into an editor role when you kind of don't really need that editor role yet because you don't have the number of writers you need to kind of take that off?
Great question. So I'm guessing a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are like me, where they're not necessarily content people, they're like business people, and content and SEO is a channel that we're currently exploiting, but it's not like our favorite thing in the world. And if you have that persona, it means that you're not going to be a very good editor, because in what we do, you know, affiliate space, SEO space, it relies on scaling content velocity, and every word of content is a liability to mess something up. Spelling, grammar, positioning, messaging, formatting, internal linking. every single word on every single page is a liability. And so the only way that it works is if the person who's editing cares, because it's just so easy to let things slide. It's the easiest thing to do is let things slide. This sentence is fine. This paragraph is fine. I'm just going to scroll and just like scan it to see.
Yeah, looks good. Publish.
That's what we're doing, and that's it's ultimately you need to find someone who loves language. My business didn't take off until I found Gordana. Gordana was one of my first writers. She was promoted to my first editor, the reason I'm out here in Belgrade. Content manager, project manager, director of operations, running our 45-person content team. She like once she joined and took over like content editing and then production and then optimization, like I could just focus on all the higher value kind of founder level things that need to get taken care of that I couldn't have done when I was like editing the content.
Yeah.
And so the strategy is when you're first hiring writers, maybe you're buying from a writer marketplace and you're like, I want to like spin up my own team. The strategy is hire more writers than you need, because over the course of 2 to 6 months, one of those writers is going to be way better than the rest, and that's going to be your best editor. It's a lot harder to hire an external editor and bring them in and make them productive than if you have one of your best writers who shows up consistently. They're constantly teaching you new things. They take your feedback and never make that same mistake. That's who you want to be your editor.
Okay. So your current editor now, you mentioned she manages 45 writers plus does projects, I guess, operations and things like that. Does that mean she's editing and publishing articles every day from those writers plus trying to run everything?
No, she has a team of editors that report to her. Okay. So it goes writers, editors, kind of, I would say, managers, and then our director of SEO and director of ops.
Okay.
So they're personally not doing any editing, any writing, any optimizations. What they're doing is they're building the team and the systems that everyone else works within.
Okay. So this is going to be a very general and broad question, but what kind of systems and processes do you need to have in place for something like that to work well? Because obviously you can get lost, things can get lost in between, I guess you could say, hierarchy in terms of maybe your writers to editors, and then maybe communication problems or workflow problems and things like that.
Yeah, so really very early on, I realized that I could not meet my own personal, professional and business goals on my own, and that I would need to build a team of people, and that team of people would not have my same experiences and skill sets. And so because I realized that early on, I kind of built the agency from the ground up, knowing that I would eventually have a team, because I just wasn't meeting my goals unless I had a team. And so I just have to build a team. And so I just started kind of building the company like I had a team before I had a team. And when you think about, holding a large group of people accountable, even a small handful of people accountable, you're much more effective when you write things down. If you tell 5 people something, they're all going to walk away with a different understanding, and you're going to find it very difficult to hold them accountable to that thing you said in a meeting 2 weeks ago. In fact, you won't. Like, it just won't get done the way you need it to get done. And so every step of every process should be documented, because this whole game is about enabling, lower cost, junior level employees to operate at a senior level and to do as good of a job as you could do, or even better. And so things from like, writer onboarding. What are all the expectations for writers in terms of grammar, spelling, formatting? How do they like request PTO? How do they submit content? How do they ask questions? All that stuff needs to be documented, or you're going to end up repeating it and people won't do it correctly.
Okay. And I'm assuming then you use some kind of project management software to do this?
So we use Slite. Slite is like Google Docs on steroids. Once you hit about 50 Google Docs, you really need a dedicated knowledge-based management solution. And Slite is a lot faster than Notion in terms of page load. We use Airtable. This tracks our content calendar. It tracks our action items. And then we actually push updates from Slite and Airtable into Slack. And so if I shared you my
Okay.
screen, we have these notifications channels, and these notifications channels just push what everybody's working on. And so I call it making data public by default. Instead of me saying, hey, James, what'd you work on this afternoon? I can go check the notification channel, because every time you update the knowledge base and every time you update the project management solution, it says, hey, here's what James worked on. Here's the status of it. Here's all the information associated with the task. I can just look instead of having to ask you, hey, what's the status of?
Yeah, it's nice. Obviously automated then, and then you don't have to worry about spending your time trying to see what's going on and kind of chasing the business rather than having it kind of just there for you.
That's exactly right. The bigger you get, the more kind of nodes there are and the more friction there is in keeping everyone in the loop on the things they need to know when they need to know it. And so by just making data public by default and kind of teaching the organization that there's specific places you can look at if you want to know what's going on around you, saves a lot of, hey, what's the status of this thing messages.
Nice. I wanted to change tack a little bit and kind of move to your case study. So you mentioned that you've actually done it on more than one site. So WorkHello's, I guess, your main example, because that's your SaaS product, going from 0 to 1.5 million organic traffic per month. I guess since you've repeated it more than once, what is it that you've found as the main factors that have allowed you to get there?
Great question. Just to clarify, the project we took from 0 to 1.5 million organics a month is the case study is hosted on Workello, but it was for
Okay, gotcha.
it was for a different startup backed by Andreessen Horowitz, and we grew them from a seed stage valuation to a $210 million Series B valuation led by A16 through SEO in less than a 2-year period.
Damn.
And our approach to this project wasn't an accident. We had kind of seen the success factors. We'd seen those again and again and again in previous projects. And so our entire approach to SEO and generating massive outcomes involves two things. One is every page of content we publish, we aim to create more value for the reader than any other page Google could show. And then the second is we do that at huge amounts of scale of over 100 pages a month. And the reason that those are two metrics is, one, we believe that Google uses Google Analytics, Chrome, and Android user data to evaluate how users respond to content, and then use UX metrics to influence your reach in the SERPs. In doing this, we don't have to build backlinks. We don't have to do technical stuff. We simply control all the factors that will drive the outcome that we're looking for through quality of content. And then doing that at a scale very few are doing. If you look at the opportunity for most businesses, most niches, you don't want to rank for a handful of keywords or even a couple hundred. You want to rank for thousands. And to rank for those thousands of keywords, you need to generate hundreds or thousands of pages. And so the biggest bottleneck in SEO actually isn't how long it takes to rank. That's only 3 to 9 months. The biggest bottleneck is how long content sits on your content calendar for. Because if there's 1,000 opportunities and you publish 10 a month, it'll take you 8 years to be everywhere your audience is today.
Gotcha. I've got a couple of questions on that. But first, in terms of providing more value in a post than what's already on Google, how are you identifying what more value is? Maybe, I don't know if you have a niche example maybe that you could give for this, maybe through that case study, or maybe we can just make one up. But if you see something on Google and it's maybe like how to do something or explaining whatever this thing is, and it gives screenshots, maybe some video, how are you then deciding what is more value against that piece of content?
Yeah, so it's two things. The first is doing research and Googling the keyword that you want to rank for and opening up all the results on a new tab. What you'll find is that positions 1 through 5 will always be missing things that positions 6 through 10 have, or other results in the top 5 have. And so one of the easiest ways you can create more value for the reader is just by the simple nature of being more comprehensive. So take all the things that each page on the first page are missing and then create an Uber article that mentions all those things. The second is a little bit harder for most SEOs because it involves having empathy for the reader. SEOs seem to be like the only marketing professional that oftentimes lack empathy for for who they're
Just click on my link. That's all I care about. Just click it.
yeah.
Get that cookie.
Yeah, who cares about the reader when we could just stuff keywords, or we could, and so if you have a lot of empathy for who's going to be reading the content, you should be able to predict what they need to know next. And going back to creating more value than any other page, if you know your audience really well and even better than the other writers, you're going to answer their search intent. And then the very next thing you're going to do is answer the next question that you know they have because you have empathy for the reader.
So how much are you formatting that article from what's already on Google? For example, you're taking the headings maybe from the top 10 you mentioned there, so to see what's missing. But then are you adding, to make it more valuable, are you adding more of kind of what's in your own mind, what you think makes logical sense to the reader then as well, to make it more unique so you're not just covering the same things as everyone else?
Yeah, so we use ClusterAI to do the keyword groupings, and essentially, we'll do our keyword research on Ahrefs. We'll get, let's say, 10,000 keywords that our audience is searching for, and then our work is done. ClusterAI will group those unstructured keywords into structured pages, and we'll know, we'll basically, every keyword that can rank together gets grouped. And then we'll use that to drive the kind of page formatting. So I don't know, I could give you an example of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's a ClusterAI deliverable. Each row is a page. This is the main keyword. This is all the variations of a main keyword. And then this is the total search volume that the page is targeting. And so once we have this from ClusterAI, SEO becomes very formulaic. I think one of the keys to our success is that we've been able to remove SEOs from the SEO process. And so going back to our team of 45 writers and editors, they're supported by one lead PM and one director of SEO. And it's because our SEOs are responsible for the systems and the processes that our content team executes on. So once we're here, everything's really formulaic at all parts of the SEO process. So in terms of optimization, this is the URL. The URL is always the main keyword. The main keyword goes always in the H1. It goes in the meta title plus something clickbait. And then the variations go in the H2s. Now, going back to structuring the article, some of these variations are going to be vastly different intent from the main keyword. Now, not different enough to not rank. All of these keywords will rank with the main keyword, but some of them are different enough where they mean different things. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're writing an article about wireless earbuds, and I see this keyword variation, best wireless earbuds with long battery life. Well, we might have a top 3 best wireless earbuds, but then we might have another top 3 based off of just this one selection criteria for people who are only shopping on battery life. Maybe we'll have one for only people searching on sound quality. And so we'll turn the ones that are different into H2s, unique H2s. But for the ones that are the same, wireless earbud reviews, earbuds wireless, best wireless earbuds, our editors during the editing phase, they'll swap out main keyword usage of wireless earbuds with all these variations of the main keyword.
Gotcha.
And so this way, our writer doesn't really need to know how to use the variations. Our editors don't need to know SEO, but they just know during the editing, when the writer uses wireless earbuds 47 times, just swap it in for variations. Our pages end up ranking naturally for hundreds, if not thousands of keywords without anyone in the whole content production stack actually knowing SEO.
Gotcha. So then in that example of the wireless earbuds, that's a good niche example to go into. Are you always targeting that main big C keyword and then writing a huge, essentially hub or pillar post covering all the long tail variations in H2s? Or are you ever deciding to maybe, okay, I want to target best earbuds with long battery life as a separate article because maybe it's less competition to rank for? Do you have like a thought process around that?
Yeah, so we'll basically do what ClusterAI tells us to do. And so wireless earbuds would be a page, and these are the keywords we would try and optimize the page for. We would not go from the gut. And the reason is every single variation in this group of keywords has at least 3 results in common with the main keyword. So what that means is if we opened up 2 different tabs and I Googled wireless earbuds and I Googled any one of these keywords down here, there would be at least 3 pages that rank for both keywords with the same page. And if there's 3 other websites
Okay.
that rank for both keywords with one page, then I can rank for both keywords with one page.
Okay. Okay. And do you feel that, I guess, the authority of the website will play into that to rank for it? For example, if I started a new website and I was maybe 5 months in and I was going after big keywords like wireless earbuds, would I run into issues trying to rank for that? And would I be better off trying to target the long tails? Or you just think, go for that big hub page, optimize, and eventually you'll get there?
Yeah, great question. So we personally ignore keyword difficulty. I'm sure that that main keyword, best wireless earbuds, would be really difficult to rank for. But we would
Yeah.
still write about it, and we would write about every other topic that looks difficult to rank for, because we consistently outrank higher DR domains with more backlinks to a given page, with low DR domains with 0 backlinks that were built to a given page so frequently that we don't try and make gut level decisions anymore. Because if we said, we're not going to take the shot, we would have lost out on all those rankings where we didn't say that and we ended up just naturally ranking.
Do you put that down to the fact that, I guess, as a topical cluster or topical map in that article, you kind of cover all the different entities in that one page? So Google's like, okay, this must be an authoritative piece on that page because you cover all these different keywords within, or essentially every keyword related to wireless earbuds.
Not only that, but I think because we cover the content so comprehensively on that one page, and then we have hundreds of pages of supporting content that are just as comprehensive, it sends some signals to Google around this thing that SEOs are calling topical authority. And kind of the way that I explain Google's behavior is never from a technical perspective, it's always from a business perspective. Now, John Mueller says it's hard to call a 30-page website authoritative. You know, in 2022, it's true. Anyone who's launching a website can create a 30-page website. Even 50 pages isn't authoritative anymore. Even 100 pages is not even that authoritative where it might have once been. And so Google, I think, they make it hard to rank for the high value money keywords unless you have a lot of that supporting content. And my theory is 2 reasons. The first is that if they gave high value commercial keywords to anyone with a 30-page website, there would be so much variation in the search results. I launch a 30-page website, I get the high value keyword. Tomorrow, some guy in India, he launches 10 and he takes them all from me. And so Google would end up sending their users to a lot of scammy websites that don't really have business models and haven't really made customers happy. The second is that there'd be a lot of fluctuation, and yeah, you'd send people to unscrupulous websites. But if you kind of use how much supporting content they have as like a weight to give someone access to those high value commercial terms, you know, good content's expensive. If you have 1,000 pages of content, that's a big investment, and you probably have some sort of business model that customers like in order to recoup that cost or even pay for it from the get-go. And so I think the more content you publish, the more expensive it is, the more likely that you can support the investment through doing something that customers like. And that's kind of why Google, you know, kind of throttles people who don't have a lot of content.
Mm-hmm. Before I get to the supporting content part, how long is that best or wireless earbuds posting? Because if you're covering all those H2s as well, that post must be like 10,000 plus words.
Maybe, you know, we'll just ask Google. Most of the stuff that we want to know, we'll ask Google by just Googling the keyword and then counting the words on the first 3 results. That's the same way we figure out if it's a product page, a category page, a home page, a blog post. You know, we just see what Google's already ranking and then we just match that.
Okay. Does that mean you'd then have to maybe pull back on your descriptions of those products? Because, for example, as you mentioned, you might have an H2 of best wireless earbuds with long battery life, best for comfort, whatever, and you said you maybe have 3 products under each one for people who are looking for those. Does that mean then you'd have to have maybe only a couple of paragraphs of text under each one because you want to stay within a certain word count limit?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different factors. Like one of the factors we consider is, well, on our writers write 1,600 words a day. And so our average page length, coincidentally, is also how much a writer can write in a given day, just because it's easier for logistically. So there's a lot of reasons why I might choose a page length that like doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
1,600 words is one write a day. So that's generally how long each page is of content we write.
Gotcha. And you mentioned obviously using supporting content to help essentially create that topical authority or topical map on your website. How are you deciding? So this is something that I'm, I guess, personally, I wouldn't say struggling with, but kind of thinking about with my own site. So let's just take, for example, let's say I'm in golf or something, and I'm like, okay, I've got the best driver for long distance or whatever it is. And then I want to create supporting content around, I guess, drivers, different angles, different lengths, whatever, best for left-handed, things like that. Why can I go with those keywords, for example, that I know aren't going to bring me sales and money? I don't know if that makes sense. So, for example, if I'm writing about drivers, but then I start writing about informational content that I know doesn't really relate to that article or to the sale, are you still targeting that just so you have content on the site and have more content coming in, more traffic, even though that traffic might not be relevant enough to go buy whatever it is that you're trying to sell?
Yeah, good question. So, if you look at the levers that can move a page upward in the search results, there's like one, re-optimizing the content. There's two, sending more internal links at it. Maybe you have the content, maybe you need to publish new content. And then there's like three, backlinks. And so my kind of thinking is, if I'm going to spend money and on something that doesn't directly drive revenue, at least a page of supporting content could drive money, and it will rank and it will generate traffic, and some of that traffic may go convert on a different page. Where spending that same budget to increase rankings on backlinks, I know that the backlink that I buy probably isn't going to have any referral traffic, which means there's no chance of anyone giving me money from that backlink investment. And so
okay, that's a good way of looking at
if
it.
internal links are going to move the needle or backlinks are going to move the needle, internal links just have other stuff that's nice to have.
So my example then, if I started writing like the history of golf or the history of this golf course, even though it's not related and it's not bringing the traffic that's looking to convert for whatever, it at least has the potential, because the history of golf might look at drivers and they might click on that internal link and go to best.
Whatever. Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense for the readers too, because the way I described that probably didn't make any sense to anyone.
A backlink's a couple $100. A page of supporting content is around the same, but the page of supporting content will bring in traffic and maybe revenue, and the backlink is probably just a backlink. It won't drive any traffic.
Nice. Okay, before I jump into that, you also mentioned content velocity earlier in this podcast. So I guess how much weight do you put on content velocity? Is there maybe something that you've found that's worked well? Do you need to maintain a certain publishing schedule? Is it better to just chuck it all up as much, when you have it, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so content velocity is the number one lever to get faster SEO results. And if you look at in any industry, all the biggest players in the space will have the most amount of pages. And there's a couple, the first is I'm going to highlight this with just a couple big wins in SEO across all industries, but then I'm going to show you the biggest players in one industry. And so we have the organic traffic per month, we have the number of pages, and then we have the traffic per month per page, and this is on average. And then we have the number of months it would take to catch up to these big players. So if you're the points guy, you're generating only 50 visitors per month per page. Everyone but NerdWallet and Wirecutter are generating below 500 visitors per month per page. And chances are you're not NerdWallet or Wirecutter, so you're not going to be generating this much traffic per page. And then when you look at kind of the moat they have, with NerdWallet, you'd have to publish 472 pages every single month for 3 years to catch up with them where they are today. Just such an incredible moat. And so I want to show you one other kind of analysis that I've done in the dog space. So we have the domain, we have the estimated traffic from Ahrefs, we have the DR, we have the number of pages, and we have the traffic generated per page per month. Now, the band here is pretty narrow. On the low end, the lowest is generating 170 visitors per page per month. The high end isn't too much higher. It's only 872. There's no website that's generating 80% of the traffic with 20% of the content. So, looking at this, if you want to generate 1 million visitors a month, you need at least 1,000 pages. And I know that because there's no one generating more than 1 million visitors a month with less than 1,000 pages. It's very linear.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I know backlinks don't really matter is because down here, Doggypedia, this is my site. I sold it to AlphaPa, but before I sold it, it started off as a DR0. I grew it to a DR9 without building any new backlinks, just natural stuff. And then we actually had a higher efficiency score than a lot of our competitors with DR60 pluses. And so if I wanted to take Doggypedia to 1 million organics a month, I know that I would need to publish about 800 more pages.
Okay. And then in terms of how quickly you would publish those 800 more pages, is that going to play a role then as well, how fast you do it? Like, for example, maybe someone's listening like, I'll publish 800 pages over the next 3 or 4 years because I'm just going to do a couple a week. Obviously, how quickly you publish them plays a role then?
Yeah, you can't rank for a keyword until you have a page about that keyword published. And so if it takes you 1,000 pages to reach 1 million organics a month, and it takes you 5 years to publish those pages, well, you can add another 9 to 12 months for that content to fully mature before you're generating that 1 million visitors a month. But if you do it all in the first year, then you add 9 or 12 months for that content to mature, and now you're generating that same amount of traffic in year 2 rather than year 5.
How often are you going back to refresh content then? Because if obviously you're focused on publishing all these pages, and for example, maybe your first content you did 1 or 2 years ago is now needs to be updated because maybe something new came out and you research whatever it is. Do you have a process for going back and refreshing content?
It's super personal, and it depends on, you have to evaluate basically what's the opportunity from exploiting new opportunities versus kind of maximizing existing opportunities we've already covered. And a lot of the times what I found is that I'm more interested, or the client's more interested in opening up new opportunities, uncovering more surface area than going back and optimizing for kind of move something from the bottom of page 1 to the top. Both are important, but I just find that exploiting new opportunities is a little bit more important, it turns out, when we do the math.
Gotcha. And then in terms of internal linking, so obviously you've mentioned internal linking quite a few times within this podcast too. Do you have, I guess, a general strategy that you like to run through when you're internal linking? Are you choosing certain anchor texts? Maybe are you keeping things tight within a category?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm like such a big fan of internal linking. I always say that internal links do what people think backlinks do, meaning that when I do want to improve the rankings of a particular page, the first thing, and generally the only thing I'll do, is send more internal links at it. And I might send 100 internal links at it, and that usually always works to get me the desired outcome. Part of the reason I don't build new backlinks is because I've never had to learn how to kind of get the results that I wanted to get. In part because I use internal links. So going back to this opportunity analysis that I'm showing you, the deliverable for ClusterAI, basically it allows us to understand all of the kind of content opportunities within the earbud space. And now we know what our kind of power pages are. And so we might say in every page of content under this content series, we need internal links to the top 20 pages because we know that they have the most volume potential. Now, we also have a separate process. So the writer has to find a place to do 20 internal links here. But we're also going to tell our writer, hey, here's our content calendar. I need you to find 10 contextual internal links for content that hasn't been written yet. And so the writer will have access to all the content we've ever published or will publish, and then they'll just look for new opportunities that make sense within the paragraph or the sentence that they're writing. And so that way we walk away, all of our content generally has 20 or 30 internal links. We have really strong time on site, pages visited, bounce rate, etc., because the user can very quickly get more, granular.
How are you using the internal link? Are you just for example, in a paragraph you mention a certain pair of headphones, you're just hyperlinking that, or are you actually being like, click here to read more on whatever? Are you kind of directing them to click the link, or is it kind of just internally linked because you just want to have everything kind of
It
linked
gets
together?
pretty complex. Tracking all the variations that you'll use for anchor text. Um,
Mm.
Ideally, we would use more anchor text variations, but just tracking, okay, there's 15 variations that we need to use. This variation's been used X times. This variation's been used Y times. It's just too complex. And so, kind of part of our philosophy to systems optimization is, make things simple. And so we generally just tend to use the main keyword for whatever the page we're linking to is. Not optimal, not ideal, but
Gotcha.
when you're creating thousands of internal links a month, it just keeps it easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I saw on the spreadsheet as well, there were keywords like brand keywords, like Apple earbuds or Skull Candy earbuds. Are you still targeting those terms, even though Google's probably bringing up the actual brand website for those?
I think it depends on the search whether Google will prioritize the brand's website or not. If we take a look and like there's no third party sites ranking, maybe we won't cover it. But if we see what we're looking for is that a third party site ranks right underneath one of the branded properties. So like it goes website, Twitter, Instagram, random publisher. That's our key to know that we can take that person's spot.
Gotcha. And have you found that that spot brings in traffic for those, I guess, branded keywords? It's worth targeting?
The way that we kind of think about traffic growth isn't necessarily on a per page level, just simply because we're taking so many shots at target. And so, instead of like let's say a sports analogy where we analyze how many, every let's say shot every shot within a basketball game, we're looking at how many shots did we take in the game compared to our game last week, or how many shots did we take this week compared to
Mm.
our series of games last month. And some pages, we're going to underperform on, but some pages we're going to overperform on. But in general, we're looking at across a site wide or a content series wide kind of KPI.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you have then an order that you like to get your content written based on that keyword document? Are you just like, okay, we're just going to go from the highest volume, I don't care, we're just going to get them all done anyway? Or are you like, okay, we're going to start with maybe the lower volume stuff because typically it might be lower competition
Yeah,
and kind
it's
of
super
work your way up?
personal, depending on how we're feeling. There's a bunch of different factors that'll dictate, but like you said, the common strategies are go for the high volume first, go for the low volume first because they're less competitive, go for the high commercial intent
Mm.
first because you'll rack up, wins earlier, but it'll take longer versus the less commercial stuff, which you can get traffic, but maybe you don't get clicks. So, kind of just depending on like what KPIs the stakeholders want, whether that stakeholder is me personally for my internal project, or maybe that stakeholder is a customer of ours. Um, there's a bunch of different prioritization strategies, and we don't have a specific one. Lately, we've been doing bottom of the funnel content first. We know it's going to
Okay.
take longer to rank, but we know as it's ranking and accumulating traffic, that'll tie back to revenue. And that will be encouraging for the stage of the campaign that we're at.
And you obviously talked a bit about not going out and building backlinks or buying backlinks for the site, but obviously you've had, I guess, naturally occurring backlinks come back to the site as you've kind of scaled your content. Are there any pieces of content that you've found that have attracted backlinks more than other pieces of content that you've written?
I don't. I've just stuff I've read. Like you can create a statistics article, and then people searching
Mm.
for statistics will link to. I've never done that. I feel like, when you're looking at one of the most deceptive metrics in Ahrefs or SEMrush is how many referring domains go to a particular page. You go to the top pages report, you see these, the top pages, and they all have like, let's say 10 to 100 referring domains. And then you click in, and then it's all auto-generated spam BS. Either it's coupon sites, it's these like people always ask scraper sites, and you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
the keywords ranking on the pages ranking for this keyword all have 50 backlinks, and then you click in and you realize all of them are BS, auto-generated. No one asked for them. They're not being built. They're just happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It takes some extra analysis when you're going through that to actually open the pages and see which one's actually legit links.
In 99, it just seems like Ahrefs, there's so many unlegit that like it's just an unhelpful metric to know how many referring domains are going to a particular page.
Yeah. Okay, so that means you don't even really check kind of where your referring domains are coming in to, I guess, on the site, or is that still something you kind of look at internally? Like,
we've never had to build backlinks to get the desired outcome, and I think this approaching SEO with all of the success factors being within your control on your site is a powerful place to approach SEO. You're not praying to the Google gods, and I think that's a good thing. But the websites that I work on with higher authority and more backlinks, their content ranks quicker. I know that my project will be more successful faster on a high DR site. I also know that it's not a requirement to be successful. So all things being equal, give me the high DR site. Let's publish content on top of the DR 70, but it's not a necessity to win.
Have you had any issues with Google updates with your content strategy at all? Have you ever been hit, or are you kind of like the strategy like just seems to be impervious to updates?
I got this meme I post every Google update, and it's basically that like Asian guy riding a bull and just like crushing it.
Yeah.
Wearing his like work clothes, and it's like, how's this banker riding a bull so well? And my caption is finding out about the Google update from Facebook. Because I always find out about the Google updates from people posting, oh no, my site went down. Because we never get hit. And I think it's a function of, focusing on the user. How can I create the best page of content that Google's users could ever see? And I think that kind of approach will always be rewarded, and Google will, only more heavily lean on UX metrics to influence rankings.
Nice. I think that was actually a good way to kind of lead off to end this podcast. But is there anything else you wanted to add, Nick, to this podcast? And if not, where can people kind of follow you, find you, learn more about Workalo and all the things you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So all of the things that we've discussed today, I give away the secrets in a lot more detail on my YouTube channel, Content Distribution, on my website, workalo.com. You can join our Facebook group, Fat Graph Content Ops. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick from Seattle and LinkedIn at Nick from Seattle. And I'm just giving it all away. So lots more where this came from. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun to share, how I, as a sales guy up until a couple of years ago, have been able to win at SEO without having those typical SEO skills a lot of people think you need to have big outcomes.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is down to, as you mentioned, if you create the content the user wants and it's comprehensive and it's not just typical, I guess, SEO writer content that someone hires to write on something, creating a page that just covers exactly the same thing as everyone else, then you can start to see some wins, especially if you're doing it at scale like you are.
Yeah. And I think, just like you're focusing on websites and niches where you can provide a lot more value than the average participant within that niche, is just like, it's a very defensible strategy. Naval Ravikant calls it product market founder fit. A good niche website for you isn't a good niche website for me because I don't know about the same stuff you do. And so my content won't be good.
That's such a good, hopefully the people who listen to us who are looking to maybe get into a niche site or anything, listen to that, because people will always ask, what's the best niche to start a site in? What are some niche to start a site in? And as you mentioned, if you have knowledge in the space or interest in the space, you're going to go further with the site. You're going to hopefully or ideally have some kind of leverage or competitive advantage over everyone else because you are already in that space, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, Nick. I really appreciate it. And I'll link up your socials and website in the description as well. So anyone listening, if you're listening on YouTube, you can check that. Also, if you're on Spotify or anything else, you can also check that there. If you did listen on a podcast platform, I highly recommend you come watch the YouTube one, because obviously Nick shares the screen with some of his keyword clusters there that he uses with ClusterAI, so you can kind of see that process there as well. But thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being such a good host. I had a great time. Felt very good.
No, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Until the next episode, goodbye.